Morning everyone, got an exciting one here for us today. We're looking at the Harathi Hinterlands, a map I have a ton to talk about, even though in theory this should be a really rubbish, boring map, because it's mostly dealing with the Centaurs. That said, I love the way that the events are structured on this one, I love the way that the metas even flow into one another, and I have a lot of memories about being here in some of my earliest Guild Wars 2 experiences, sort of seeing this map as the logical ultimate version of what a dynamic event can be or should be. I was actually hoping a lot of the Orion stuff would end up being structured just like this, and to a certain extent it kind of is. So there's a certain flow to this map that I guess not all players would end up falling into, and especially if your primary motivation is map completion, you might end up going in some weird angles. I don't know how the footage will go here, we'll see as it goes along. But this is even an interesting map for how it overlays with Guild Wars 1. So, the story in Guild Wars 2 is this is really where the Centaurs are waging war from. If you remember in the personal story tutorial, right at the start of the game as a human, a great shaman, Modnir Olgoth, is attacking Shamor. Like, the Centaurs have got far enough forward that they can attack goddamn Shamor on the doorstep of Divinity's Reach. Which really is kind of amazingly profound. And yes, you become known as the hero of Shamor and stuff, and they do give it a bit of fanfare. I feel like there could have been a lot more emphasis on just how wild that is, you know, how much territory they'd managed to gain. Maybe the idea is it's just like an assault force that the Centaurs sent that slipped through somehow. But anyway, they've got Modnir Olgoth with them, who's kind of like their big, furious leader. He summons the Earth Elemental. Well, on this map, he comes back as a world boss, which is really quite cool, and I guess when we get closer to the world boss area, I'll talk about it, but this general region of the world is all about, this is where the Centaurs are waging their fights from. It's a lot of Seraph-oriented stuff, like for example, we're near this body of water, there's a hidden cave down there that if you swim into, you find a lot of hiding humans, and just whatever kind of resistance the Critons can make against this armada arrayed against them. As far as Guild Wars 1 is concerned, this body of water is actually kind of a cool place for us to be right now, and we're going to do the heart with the lost supplies, which I always think is a bit of a shame. We should go inside and do the cages. I guess we will. This body of water is interesting. In Guild Wars 1, the entire south part of this map was an enormous lake. Like, I believe, did they say it was a saltwater lake, maybe? I can't remember in the descriptions. But there were two enormous lakes flanking the north of Crita in Guild Wars 1. They were collectively known as the Giants Basins. There's the Greater Giants Basin, the Lesser Giants Basin. Now, in Guild Wars 1, I was always really excited to explore those places. And in fact, one of the northernmost outposts you could go to in the original game talked about the lands to the north a little bit and giants attacking from the lands to the north. But there was like only one land bridge between the two lakes that could take you to the north. So, and then there was maybe a suggestion that Saul had gone there and that's where he'd found the White Mantle and stuff. But we could never go up there and we could never swim in the lakes. Fast forward to pre-release Guild Wars 2, they're telling us how we can swim now. And if you guys remember, if you played Guild Wars 1, around Crita, if you looked in the water, there was all these sharks and drakes and things, and it looked just so exciting to swim around in. So that was my ultimate dream, to swim in the Giants Basin. Either of them. And now here we are at Harathi, which is where the Lesser Giants Basin should be, but it's not here. There's some water in this map, obviously. They're rivers, but completely unrecognizable. And I guess this water system here. Unrecognizable from the Giants Basin in Guild Wars 1. And even worse, the Greater Giants Basin, while it still exists, it's been dammed. And then when you finally get on the other side of the dam in Living World Season 3 and you get to go to what they now call Lake Doric, that's been drained. So I've never got to live my fantasy of swimming in those amazing, mysterious-looking places on the world map. By the way, I have to say, these caves are what I was talking about a lot in the Gendaran Fields episode. Really fun area. I love all the platforming and climbing around you do. Go behind a waterfall, find a secret area. Come on, that's brilliant. That's great. That's RPG stuff 101, guys. And they do it here. It's a brilliant cave as well for a very sad event to do with a giant who is suffering a bereavement. And you might spend a lot of time here as well doing one of the guild races, which weaves you all around the cave, behind the waterfall. There's spike traps everywhere. You're actually playing as a wolf. It's one of my favorite races, just for the abilities that the wolves get. It's very, very nice. So, yeah, I actually end up spending a lot of time in this cave. Probably, on balance, I've spent more time in this cave in Harathi than I have anywhere else, probably just because of that mission. Anyway, yeah, here's the back areas, and you can see that we have an event to bring shrink cap spores, a type of mushroom, to Fen. Fen is a giant that's on this map. There's actually 2 giants. There's a non-hostile one, this guy, Fen, and then there's a hostile one as well in one of the other caves way off on the northeast. But yeah, Fen wants to shrink down so we can fit inside the cave and visit a grave here. It's a really, really beautiful event. Definitely recommend you guys check it out. So as we move north now, I think you need to do this event for Twilight and stuff as well, because there are a lot of graves in there. You need to like kneel or give respect to them. It's cool to see a giant shrunk down too. So moving north now, we come to a brilliant place, and I can start talking about Guild Wars 1 a little bit again. Help Ket investigate the ruins of Demetra. Not Demetra, which was how I pronounced it for years. It's pronounced Demetra. So this is an old Crichton settlement that, rather having fallen to the Centaurs, is now haunted. There's a brilliant Easter egg on the interior where you basically find out this hosts the supposed tomb of Saul D'Alessio, who was the founder of the White Mantle. And as we know, as Guild Wars 1 players, Saul D'Alessio actually got abducted by the Massart and disappeared. He was actually thrown in a jail that one of the raid stories will talk about. So we know he went missing, but the White Mantle, liars as they were, just sort of told their people that he died, and they built this fake tomb for him, which has an Easter egg in it where you kneel a statue of Dwayna in here, and a priestess will come out and help you to reveal a lost spirit by this fake tomb. I was so thrilled when I came here. The story of Saul D'Alessio is one of my all-time favorite stories in Guild Wars. It's actually kind of concluded story now, which is, you know, it doesn't necessarily make it any worse. But when Guild Wars 2 came out, there was all this mystery about it. And here was this tomb, and I was like, oh, what? So he did die? But then they reveal it's a fake tomb. Really fantastic. And as far as Guild Wars 1's concerned, Demetra was explorable. Now, in the previous part, if you're watching the playlist, we were in the Fields of Ruin. And in the Fields of Ruin, I explained how that map may be the contender for the least amount of traversable overlap between the two games. Well, it's also true that this map has basically no overlap. As I just explained, most of it was a goddamn lake before, and it was too far north. You didn't really get to explore here. With one exception, the bonus mission pack. So here's Shaman's historical guide. And you will see for the bonus mission pack players of Guild Wars 1, there is indeed one mission worth of overlap. And it's right around here at Demetra. This is where you got to visit Demetra. And I seriously doubt it's a coincidence. This is also the same mission that showed the abduction of Saul, that set that mystery up, that had the Massart take him away. And so I guess when they were building Guild Wars 2, they looked at what they had historically here, knew that it was the bonus mission pack. The bonus mission pack kind of came out quite late in Guild Wars 1's run to a certain degree as well. It came out after Eye of the North, but before Beyond, so it was like sandwiched between those two things. So, I guess it was very much on their minds, and they just kind of, they didn't resolve in 2012 to conclude the mystery, but they did resolve to keep it in our minds by introducing that tomb. And visiting Demetra there was just so fantastic. Also, many of these roads, these are also lining up super well with the Guild Wars 1 interpretation of the place. Of course, the mission here in GW1 is actually to do with the Char more than anything else. This is where the Char invasion arrived. We're talking about a Centaur invasion and Centaur forces here, 250 years in the future. Also a few of these bandits, as it looks like we're lagging out. It's all Centaur now, but back then, this was where the Char waged their attack. So I like the idea that this is, you know, an ancient battlefield, so to speak. I'm always quite captivated by then and now images on the internet of, you know, this is what this house looked like in the year 1901, and here's how it looks in 2001, or here's how it looked in the year 1880, and here's how it looks today. You get a lot of that stuff for ancient battlefields as well, you know, sites of great conflict during World War I, World War II to an extent. For the Americans, they talk about the Civil War a lot. And I kind of think of Harathi as being that, you know, except it's become a war zone again. But the idea that, you know, there are however many Char graves and stuff around here. Actually, throwing a couple of Char ghosts into the ruins of Demetra might have been a really nice touch. But I don't think the devs really implemented any Char ghosts, did they? I think most ghosts we find are like faux fire ghosts. But there are obviously shades and other spectral creatures around. Because they kind of have that issue in Ore as well. Those videos will be a considerable bit later in the playlist. But when we get to Ore, in theory, you could have a load of undead or ghostly Char there, but risen Char as well. And I think the devs could have added a few more than they did in the end. So this area, this heart, is actually the very first heart I ever did in Harathi. I remember really struggling with it because there's a cave where a spider boss can spawn. There's actually a whole event chain here with a bunch of people getting abducted and cocooned by spiders. You free them, then you resolve to fight the spider that did it. You go into the cave, and it's a really difficult boss. Here, you can see the events up right now, and someone's doing it, freeing this trapped Seraph, this 6 out of 7. That will chain into an event that telegraphs you to go into a cave. And when I first arrived here doing this heart, that was the event that was up. If you can phase the spider, it goes invulnerable, disappears, and you get swarmed by a bunch of other ones. A bit like the Wasp event from Queensdale again, come to think of it. I never realised that they basically copied that format. But I remember really, really struggling. But I also remember being really captivated and just excited exploring this map for some reason, even though it is just more and more Centaur stuff. You saw another little magical distortion in the air there. That was added to the game super recently. I don't consider it a full map change, but that was added with the sky scale mount, a dragon that you can fly. And if you fly it into those, you'll see them multiple times throughout this playlist. They basically reveal flight paths for you that can move you around different areas of the map. You get an achievement for finding all of them. I think most people probably haven't done those, but they're well worth it. And maybe if you're doing a world completion on mount, that might be something fun to look at to actually speed you up. If this series here was a mounted series, it would probably be a very, very, very different experience, much faster. I kind of wanted, and I asked TechZoom this as well, not to use mounts in the footage. I kind of wanted the timing of these videos to be such that it's not quite a speed run, but then it's not also a full-on Let's Play. I'm not joking, guys. If you for some reason don't realize this, each of these videos could easily be in the 2 to 5 hour range. I'm not joking. If we really wanted to speak to all these NPCs and do all of the scouts and demonstrate every possible variation for every heart, watch all the vistas, all that stuff, and it was like live commentary or something with no mounts. That's how much content there was in Guild Wars 2, really. And I think about a lot of people miss some of it. It's just it's such a ridiculous prospect to cover in that kind of detail, so I'm settling with this instead. We get the tours, though. You know, it's pretty good. So here we're at Seraph's Landing. Now, Seraph's Landing, first of all, is a brilliant place because it's just got so much detail and NPCs you can speak to. There's, I think, a portrait of, what is it, Logan Thackeray in one of these rooms, and a character talks about it. In fact, a lot of the concept art that appears in the original trailer you can find in some of these places, and there are NPCs to interact with. There's a lot you could do for the heart, including helping the fisherman down near that trading post that's on that dock. That is not a player dropped trading post. That's a regular trading post. You could use this as a bit of a base of operations if you wanted. You can tend to the animals here. You can fight centaurs that are up to the north and surrounding a hero challenge, and you can like treb them. This is a really well made area. I'm not sure what motivated ArenaNet to go so ham on Seraph's Landing, but it feels like a real home away from home. Very, very badass. It's like Claypool level of well implemented. I remember though when I first played this, very sadly I missed a lot of the detail. I did this. There are, on an interval of maybe once every 60 seconds, 3 centaurs will test the defenses of the Seraph by attacking that doorway. And I remember standing around at that door, I'm so ashamed to admit this, just killing them on repeat. Which is not the fastest way of doing this, and it's not the most immersive or intriguing either. Oh, they're not trebs, it's artillery, I see. Unless are the trebs broken maybe and we have to repair them? Not sure. The other great thing about this area is it's kind of the start, the logical start of the whole big Centaur war phase, in that there are events to push out and attack nearby outposts here. If the Centaurs owned the whole map, they would never get Seraph's Landing. But there would be events leaving Seraph's Landing to capture nearby camps. And then once you capture those camps, you spread out, and you capture those, you spread out, you spread out, you spread out. And you really will, and I did have this experience, you will slowly move from this left side of the map to the very top right side of the map. And end up fighting Old Goth himself, which is badass. Another cool thing about this area that we're very unlikely to see because it's super, super rare is that lake is where one of the dynamic boats is. I don't know whether I call it an Easter egg or what, but if you watch that lake long enough, you will see fishermen sailing around on a boat. Now, the game nowadays has a lot of cool stuff like that going on, but for 2012, hell, all the way up until like 2017, that was a real novelty. And that is what I was talking about when we were in Kessex Hills, how there were several more of those boats. I would have loved to have seen them sailing around in Kessex Hills. This was the only one at release, I think. Even better, it sails around and then it actually goes through a little channel of water to the left, which in 2012 there was no map to the left of Harathi Hinterlands. To the left of Harathi Hinterlands is actually north of Divinity's Reach. It was a planned map called Lake Doric pre-release, but didn't actually exist. Many years later, the devs did implement Lake Doric. Not fully. The original pre-release Lake Doric, the one that never existed, was actually this huge map that surrounded all the northern areas of Divinity's Reach and included both dams. It was really, really quite big. I really recommend you guys check out my exploration video of that, Interior 3D. Really, really cool. When they re-implemented it with Living World, they decided a map that big was too much to bite, too much to chew. So they only did like a portion of it. So you only get like a little section. But the portion they did is right next to Harathi Hinterlands. So now, if you go in that channel of water where the boat sails, you can actually map transition. There's a way to move between the two maps, to seamlessly move from 2012 content to like 2017 content if you own that Living World episode. That's the kind of stuff I love, like proper integration. That's what I'd like to see, you know, for the desert gateway near Ebonhawk, for example, or some of these other locations that I've been talking about. Really, really, really badass. And now the guy that sails through the channel out onto the lake, it makes sense because you can see he came from Lake Doric, and you can go there too now. You can. It's in a very kind of crazy, hectic moment of the story, so it's not exactly peaceful on the other side, but it's possible, and that's enough for me. So as far as map completion is concerned, our method of maneuvering through the Harathi Hinterlands is not quite going to be the same as if we were trying to aid the war effort. The unfortunate thing as well, I think Guild Wars 2 suffers in many ways from power creep, both as an RPG, as a compelling, you know, moment-to-moment experience for combat, but also its dynamic event system. And Harathi Hinterlands is a great example of that, in as much as because of the power creep, one player can handily and quickly, that's important too, deal with any of these events. So the odds of you coming in and playing the Harathi Hinterlands to find that the Centaurs have actually overwhelmed everything is very low. The only way that you would see that is if there was absolutely zero player population here for several hours in a row. And that's just not going to happen. The dream is that there's lots of people here struggling in the fight, but somewhat losing, and you come in as the reinforcements, plus maybe a couple of other people, maybe some friends that you're partied with, maybe a guild, you know, maybe this is a reason to have guilds in the game, and now you can turn the tide, and, you know, that would be a really profound, fun experience. But that just doesn't happen with the power creep, and that doesn't happen with dynamic events the way that they were made. I did a little talk on one of the other videos on this playlist about my proposal for fixing that, but it means that Harathi is potentially a really cool map, and for me, my early experiences, it was, but otherwise, not so much. The other thing that kind of breaks it down is this. So now we're moving to the final meta area, the Seraph Assault and Centaur camps, and you'll see it says there, time remaining to confront Olgoth, 7 minutes. Here's the other thing that kind of just broke this. Once upon a time, the spawning of Olgoth would happen naturally as you swept through the map and you got to fight him. Now he's a proper world boss on a timer. So what happens is every X interval, I'm not sure what it is, every 3 hours, something like that, and maybe every hour and a half, Olgoth will just spawn, completely irrespective of what the rest of the state of the Harathi Hinterlands is like. Maybe it cares about like the 1 or 2 events immediately preceding him, but that's it. And then, you know, it will just happen. The final assault will be there, and players always appear there, don't get me wrong. Everyone knows, you know, you can have world boss timers, so everyone knows that he's about to spawn, so everyone goes there. You do get this final moment of a big Zerg fighting the boss, but it doesn't feel earned. Back in the day, oh god, I sound so old, but when the game came out, it was the Zerg that was at your side as you fought Olgoth were people you had slowly picked up along the way, and there was something really strong about that experience. I don't think it's the biggest problem. There are tons of maps in Guild Wars 2, and in a lot of those, particularly in Heart of Thorns, that dynamic building of a Zerg is kind of preserved, and you still get to feel it. But this was really the main map for that, even including the Orion maps, which again, I think could have done similar stuff. This one I had the best experience of. So, yeah, even though it's really just dealing with the Centaurs. To talk a little bit about them, by the way, I've been talking about Centaur variety and like how maybe they could have mixed things up a bit. There is a destroyer attack actually here in the personal story, so they do that. But what you guys should understand is there are actually multiple tribes of Centaur, and the idea is that they have now unified, and that's how they've managed to actually threaten the humans. So, I don't know, maybe I'm reading that Mr. Trick making the Harathi feel super different to the Tamini, feel super different to the Modnir, for example. In Guild Wars 1, the different tribes also existed, and the main thing was you found them in different areas of the world. Like the Modnir were the Centaurs you found in the Shiver Peaks. And what were they called? The Lasaru? There was another one from the Crystal Desert that don't appear in Guild Wars 2. Were they the Lasaru Tengu, or am I getting that? Lasari? Anyway, the Modnir in particular are kind of the big antagonists. Olgoth is a Modnir. The story is that the Modnir kind of subjugated and therefore also, in a way, united all these other tribes. They came down from the Shiver Peaks, and now here they are in the Harathi Hinterlands waging this big fight. So the Modnir are kind of the big bad guys. So there is lore distinguishing the different Centaur populations, but they all look very similar, and they all do the same kind of combat. So for players, I think it all blurs together. Like, for example, how many of you right now can pause the video and tell me, without looking it up, which tribe it is that is in the Centaur camp to the south of Fort Salma in Kessex Hills? If you even know what I'm talking about. How many of you can do that? What tribe is it that's there? You know, I think that's a problem, that people can't answer that question. I can't even answer it. That's why I'm asking this here. I can't remember which tribe it is that's specifically around in Kessex more than anything else. You know, maybe if some of them had a bit of a redesign so they looked like different kinds of horses almost. I don't mean like model. I mean like, you know, maybe they can have like a different texture. Maybe some of them could be really jet black and some of them could be, you know, really white but pockmarked with brown or something, you know. There's a lot of variety to horses, IRL. I'm sure we can do it with centaurs in here. So, yeah, anyway, we might get footage here of confronting Olgoth. I really don't know. I haven't seen this before. We're lagging a little bit, which is funny. I wonder if that's because there's a lot of players here. But Olgoth will spawn in 2 minutes, and he's just through those gates. I wonder if TechZoon is a little bit keen to get over there. So far throughout this series, we have not seen the world bosses. But that's okay, because I integrated most of them into the personal story playthrough. So I have covered them. Man, I'm so excited to get these videos out for you guys. I know for a lot of people it's open world and it's kind of a done topic. But for me, it's not a done topic. I've never in 8 years covered the open world. And I've chronicled basically everything about this game at this point. Except this. So, you know, this is the third wing. I'm so thrilled to get these out. It's pretty brilliant. So, yeah, maybe we're a little bit far away right now. It looks like there are some other players. You see there's a Revenant, Herald over there, specifically, who was on his Raptor, and you can kind of destroy these guys. You should end up finding a lot of people. Now, let's talk about the meta event itself and the fight itself. The Olgoth that appears here is the real Olgoth, and you do get to... He will summon Earth Elemental Hands again, just like he did in the personal story start. But here's a weird thing. ArenaNet always tried to keep antagonists in dynamic events, or even allies in dynamic events, kind of generic. Instead of referring to them as their full name, they would refer to them as like their title. And in this way, it makes sense for them to come back and over and over and over again. But they kind of dropped the ball here for Olgoth. Like, I get that there's a cool fantasy, we get to kill Olgoth, but it doesn't really make sense that you take Olgoth out and then you're going to take him out again in an hour and a half, and then again. You know, that invalidates the idea of persistence in the world. Which is why, when we were doing the Fields of Ruin before, you know, I talked about the leader of the Renegade Char. He dies in the personal story, so there is a sense of permanence. They never chose to have a personal story step for fighting against the Centaurs as far as the humans are concerned. They put it in the open world. And I wonder why that decision was made. I get that they had a lot going on with the humans. They got the bandit story, the White Mantle stuff. They've got kind of space they kept for a more funny story with the circus things. There's loads. It's chock-a-block. But why not with one of the Order storylines? Why couldn't maybe the... Oh, I don't know. The Vigiler dealing with the human Char conflict. Maybe the Order of Whispers could be dealing more heavily with the human Centaur conflict. The Order of Whispers do focus a lot with more human politics stuff. Well, I guess that makes sense. They wanted the Order of Whispers to be have a more political bent, so it made sense to deal with Cordicus and stuff more, and the Ministry Guard, and that kind of leaves the Centaur stuff open-ended. But they wanted to tie a bow on the opening of the game where Olgoth runs away, so they went for this instead. We just missed it a little bit, but actually down to the south of this very deep camp here that you can really kind of feel is super hostile and is only safe immediately following the death of Olgoth. There's actually a cave, and there's a weird, like, rune-stoned rocky wall that I think an event is supposed to break down, but it's very rare and I very rarely see it. I remember that kind of captivating me before. So here, by the way, the Seraph are assaulting the forward camp. Did we fail to trigger him because we didn't do the pre-event? That'd be quite interesting. Oh, and that reminds me as well, did you see that huge horde of Centaurs on our right a second ago? That is another big element of this map. It was great for power leveling. This is a perfect example of a map that has so many, like, defense events that if you just bring a couple of people over, you could get swarms of Centaurs coming very regularly. You know, some of these events trigger, and it's like there'll be 12 waves of attacks. And I guess ArenaNet made it so many waves of attacks because they really wanted to be able to give the Centaurs a chance to reclaim locations. But because one wave can be dealt entirely before the next one comes, that idea of having lots of waves and people being atrophied out of locations really doesn't happen in Guild Wars 2. You got to remember, this is a game where they have no attritive combat mechanics really to speak of. They had armor breaking, which was wonkily designed and eventually just completely hand-waved. So armor breaking is not a thing. Like an energy mechanic where you slowly run out of mana and combat gets harder over the long term. That was something that existed in Guild Wars 1, does not exist in Guild Wars 2. And the second you get out of combat, which is trivial to do at any moment in the open world, you rapidly regenerate health so fast that in 2012 there was really no place or need for healers either. And again, with the way that they designed the wave assaults, enemies can't stack up. Because it's not like wave 1 is going to spawn in 60 seconds. Wave 2 is going to spawn in 120 seconds. Wave 3 at 180. And no matter your progress, they'll just keep building up and up and up. ArenaNet never made the game that way. Maybe they were scared of latency or something. They never made the game that way, so you can't actually be overwhelmed. You can just kite the last Centaur around for ages until everyone's regenerated and happy. If you ever got into such dire straits, but you never would. So that's one of the reasons why defense is so easy in the game. Like, ridiculously easy. The only way you're going to lose it is if it's scaled up so massively and the players are all fairly incompetent / fairly AFK or whatever, that they can win in, like, that one wave worth of damage because there's just too many champions that stacked up or whatever. That just wasn't happening here. I guess this wasn't a late enough game map or whatever. And all this is to say that you could handily just stand around, waves of Centaurs would come at you, you'd clear them out. I'm actually surprised I never really saw bots on this map. One of the things I regretted about episode 1 of this playlist when we were in Queensdale is I never mentioned some of those farms. I have very distinct memories, probably about 6 months after launch, of that becoming a big bot area. And there just being these zergs of players charging around, killing harpies and centaurs and bandits. Actually, not centaurs. I think it was just bandits and harpies on that one. And just running these big circles because, my god, that was a sight to behold. They would actually, like, fill up whole maps. The bots would be so many. I guess gold selling was such a big thing. You know, one great thing about Guild Wars 2 these days, I don't really get spammed with gold sellers in any way. I think the devs have really managed to figure that out. And I don't really see bots. So, I don't know whether that's demand has gone down. One of the reasons this is a bit of a sidebar to open world, but one of the reasons this game allows you to in-house trade gems for gold is just to undermine the existence of gold sellers. And maybe we've got to a point now where they've really managed to sort the markets well. So this area here, training with a company, Thunder Rock meta event, is kind of separate to the other main warpath and can trigger separately. But actually kind of deals with the cool idea. Obviously, there's the iconic band of Logan, Ritlock, and so on, each of the 5 races. Well, there's kind of another band of adventurers that are cosmopolitan in the same way up there at that heart, and the Thunder Ridge meta event. So it is a fun one, but easily missed. What's also easily missed in this area of the world is a beautiful cave where a ghost Doliac only at nighttime kind of walks in, and you can get this nice little interaction in there from this Doliac graveyard. You learn a little bit about what the Doliac do when they get close to death. I really like details like that about fictional fauna in games, and ArenaNet don't do it much. They did it here with the Doliac, though, which was very, very badass. That hero challenge over there is actually kind of a challenging one as well, but it's weird. You're basically fighting a structure. You also missed for a brief moment there a depiction of the Vigil Keep, because we're actually really close to the Vigil Keep right now. And one thing I always wanted the devs to do was add an actual entrance to like the Vigil Keep basement from this map or something. I don't know, I mentioned it when we were in Gandaren. The Vigil Keep is just so cool to explore. I just wish there were more rooms, more chambers, and more reasons to go in there. So I've always been fascinated by the idea that maybe deep in the Vigil Keep is this big stairwell, and it takes you out at the cliff face around the back. How cool would that be? And then if, you know, in the personal story steps where the Risen are attacking it and stuff, there was a little bit of defense of the back door, kind of like a sneaky route in. Maybe I'm a bit fixated on that moment in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies where there's that side door inexplicably there that no one's attacking. But it would just work, you know, and we're low down from the keep. But you can see it. Nice little thing that adds that continuity to the maps because, as we all really know, they are completely separate world spaces that don't necessarily have to look like they're close to one another at all. But the devs put that detail in, which is fairly nice. We must be coming up to some of the last hearts here now. I know that there's an area on the map with an Asura studying sparks. And it's nice to see random little Asura studying things out in areas of the world like this where you really wouldn't find much of them. I can't recall much Sylvari influence and certainly not any Char assistance in this map. But the Asura, I don't think we've visited yet. I'm sure there's a POI there. If not, maybe we won't be able to visit it. So this heart in this cave, generic kill things, free slaves, kill centaurs, disrupt their camps to weaken the centaur front. You could copy-paste that description for pretty much any of the hearts. I never spend much time in here because, much like Texine here in the footage, you could just kill things like really, really quickly and run through it. It's so swarmed with enemies. This is kind of where Thunder Rock ends. There's a giant cage. In fact, look at that. Oh, look at the minimap. It looks like the event might be going on. There's a big old cage up there that is, you know, captured some of our allies and holds them prisoner, and we want to go free them. Here you go. Breach Overwatch Camp. Retrieve the companions. That's what they're called. They're called the companions. And when you do so, in fact, look, there's a player over there doing it. You can summon another champion Modnir. This is the champion Modnir Overlord. Not the War King, which is, of course, Olgoth himself. But this guy. Now, this vista here is always kind of fiddly and annoying to get to. You've really got to hug this rock and find the right place to climb up. If you go too close to the vista, you're not going to find any meaningful avenue. Even, probably, for a Springer, we're too high now. So, a lot of these little niggling things about most of these vistas just don't matter anymore because of the Springer. And I guess the Sky Scale. And I guess maybe the Griffin too at the same time. At least with the Griffin and Sky Scale, they're quite challenging to get. You can't assume every single player has them. But the Springer is pretty early in POF. And if you're going for a really efficient map comp, I mentioned earlier the idea I didn't want to do a speedrun series. I am curious what that looks like now. I don't know anyone in the most recent of days when all the mounts as we now have them exist that's doing a speedrun open world project. Like, the skimmer can swim and stuff now. That's going to speed you up massively in some of the more water-oriented maps. It would be really interesting to see the techniques and just how fast people can pull it off, a full Gift of Exploration. And there's actually kind of a market for it as well. You know, Gifts of Exploration are in high demand for legendary crafting. So yeah, we get the confinement camp. That's 14 out of 15 points of interest. There's just one slightly to the north of us. Again, a couple more sporadic events around here, but not ones that I've often done very much of. Feels like maybe here deserve to have a heart too. But I can't say that we're missing out on much, because you know what it would be. It would just be generic run around, kill things. Essentially, an MMO kill quest, which is what ArenaNet wanted to move away from so much. Ah, yes, here we go. This is it. Restricted Zone XRB. And it's an Asura that's actually tampering with the weather in the area. He's actually making it rain and storm here. This is because of this Asura, and he's having fun with that. Wow, we tagged the Overlord, did we? I don't remember tagging the Overlord. And well, with that, we have Harathi Hinterlands complete. Really fun map. Love how it overlaps with the bonus mission pack. Love being able to go this north in Kryta. Maybe one day we'll have an equivalent map to this across the Bandit Brisbane Bridge or more of Lake Doric. I guess we'll see. Please feel free to check out our Discord before I forget. Trying to get people in there, and it'll be a lot of fun. You don't need an account. Just click the link in the description. Okay, guys, I've run out of footage here. See you in the next one. Bye.